kissing the ass of a God who slaughtered 50 billion children so far for your own self-grand rights to get into heaven for eternity. This is completely basic, morally degraded. So sick and twisted. And we need to start doing this to Christians. I'm not one of those people who believe in being polite to Christians. I mean, you don't want to be rude in terms of saying nasty things to them egregiously, but confront them directly. And I'm starting to do this. And they get the deer in the headlights look.
Yeah, because you're confronting an issue. You're not necessarily confronting them. The hope is, of course, that they'll eventually see. I've used the mafia boss analogy before, which I think aptly fits the God of the Bible in almost any form you want to put them into. But in this case, when we're talking about this, I mean, this is a useful challenge for a lot of things. Maybe August 6th, when Governor Perry is down there having his prayer rally along with the American Family Association hate group, it might be worthwhile to ask them, among the problems that he thinks he's incompetent to solve and needs to appeal to Jesus for, is he thinking about doing anything for the 50 billion who have died?
How do we do that? It's an interesting thing to do.
I don't know, because I can't get him to answer questions when I'm standing next to him on the walkway of the Capitol. He just kind of runs away from me, and I've invited him on the show. So I'm planning on possibly going out there and standing out alongside, ironically, the Westboro Baptist Church, who are also protesting his event, which I think just makes this even funnier.
Get signs! Get signs literally and put 50 million children on it so far. I'm not kidding. Why don't we start doing that?
And there's a kind of an irony here, because coming from the background and knowing so many Christians, I can easily throw the hat back on and say that the most common response I would expect to this, after you get them to the point where they can't come up with anything, that they can no longer defend it without sacrificing their own integrity, is they'll do something that still sacrifices their integrity but hides it, and that is that they will just trust that God is taking care of those 50 billion in His wisdom, and that they have been spirited off to heaven.
That's the cool thing. Now, think about this. I mean, there are both different alternatives for what happened to the souls of children. I'm starting to ask that. What happened to the souls of little children when they die? And in strict Christian doctrine, they go to hell because they didn't accept the grace of Christ.
That's right. They're born with original sin.
And they're imperfect. You have to be perfect when you get to heaven. So they're being sent to hell. But very few Christians believe that. And of course, the Catholic Church tried to get around this for a while with limbo. But that didn't work, because when more modern parents were heard they were going to be with their children for eternity, they got mad. So the Catholic Church has abandoned that. So basically, I think most Christians are now going for kids to go straight to heaven, which means that since
abortion's awesome there, right? Abortion's awesome there. They go straight to heaven.
This the other thing is you can't use God as an argument against abortion and murder, because God doesn't care about this. God designed the human reproductive system so badly it kills off most conceptions and so on. But assuming that the conceptions have souls that go to hell, they die prematurely, that means the vast majority of inhabitants are children who never went through a test on Earth, never go did this free will thing or improve themselves. Again, it just exposes the thing as a sad but shows of an invention that people concocted and not thought through the consequences.
Yeah. And I will mildly disagree with you on one point. This idea of perfection, I would recommend avoiding, because in every in the versions of Christianity that I grew up with and am familiar with, it's not that you need to be perfect in order to get to heaven. It's that when you get there, God makes you perfect, which I actually think is a much stronger point to raise. Because there's this idea that after, for example, pick random Christian after they've died, they get to go to heaven. And my argument is that in much the same way that we have no good reason to think there's a soul and plenty of good reason to think there's not anything remotely like a soul, if you get to heaven and you are perfect and you are made perfect and you are changed, whatever is in heaven isn't you anymore. And I think that's an important point to hit.
Well, the reason I said that was because that's what some of the theologians say.
Yeah.
I picked that up. So, there's quite a disagreement here, but I'm not sure what to think of it. We'd have to mull it over some more.
Yeah. For every Christian, there's almost a different answer to this issue.
Well, of course.
Or at least there's one for every theologian who's managed to teach the various Christians, because evidently many of them haven't bothered to think about these issues for themselves. I found, during the course of my falling away from religion, I would read through the Bible, and of course I would ask God for guidance on this, and when no guidance came, I was left with purportedly the brain that God gave me to think it through, and it became rather obvious rather quickly that this was just absurd, if not outright immoral. And if you put together an entire system, which I think you've done kind of nicely here, where if you think about it from the perspective of this God being, and he has this goal of creating a universe for a particular race, species, whatever, that he's going to mold and guide to eventually join him in heaven. He's created a system that is not only grossly deadly in an immoral sense, but also one that's just absurd in its face. Because even if you assume that this God somehow spirited away the 50 billion and just gave them like a free pass to heaven, what was the point of putting them through those years of torture and the agonizing death in the first place? And for that matter, what's the point of putting anybody through it?
Exactly.
If he's all wise and knows everything and knows everything that's going to happen, why not just skip to the end, put the people that he wants to have around him up in heaven with him and get rid of the rest from the get-go without going through all the motions?
I want to hear back on the theologians about this. Another quick point is that God gave kids bad immune systems. He didn't even care about kids enough to give them decent immune systems to fight the diseases that he created.
Even worse, he gave them immune systems that are dependent on their mother, so if their mother's a batshit crazy anti-vaxxer, they're screwed. I can't begin to beat them up enough over that. But so thanks for leading into another good point.
Yeah.
On that note, Greg, I appreciate the call, and we've got like all the lines completely full, so I gotta let you go today. Hopefully we'll get you back on. Hopefully we'll get you in Austin to actually talk about this at some point.
Okay.
All right. Thanks much.
Take it easy.
Thank you for your work, Paul.
Bye.
Great.
Great. So yeah, good stuff to look around for. You can just do a Google search for Gregory S. Paul, and you'll find not only the journal study that we talked about before, but this new paper. Lots of things to look into there, and fun to think about, because one of the things, like at the end there, I managed to disagree with them on one little fine point, but that's good. Because, first of all, there's no easy answer to any of this, because there's 1,000 different denominations of Christians with, countless people who all have their own ideas, and I think it just shows another absurdity in this proposed plan of a wise God, when every individual sitting out there in the pew can have their own idea about this. They're all completely convinced that they are the ones who have been chosen to go on and live forever in a heaven.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. It's like that's self-gratifying. It's like another masturbation to sit there and think that you are, I'm so special. Thank you for treating me so special. And I know that those, my terrible neighbors next door are going straight to hell because they're gay or Muslim or something like that. And look how much cooler my life is. And really, I think something that we haven't talked about enough that we really should is that with a handful of exceptions, and usually those exceptions are people who are having a really difficult time getting over religious indoctrination. Every atheist I've met who was previously religious has had nothing but positive things to say about how much more improved their life is. Not necessarily how much better their life is with regard to other people, because they are often ostracized and abused, fired, kicked out of their house and things like that. But as far as how they feel about themselves, about their integrity, about their moral compass, about their ability to look around the world and wonder and explore without the nagging guilt that is imposed by religion, I think that's a message that has to get out there, so that the people who are currently trapped in fear can step out away from that. And we need to build communities around so they have a place to go during that transition process, and then be the next people to help after that.
Okay.
We got like 27 minutes left.
Why don't we go out with calls?
You want to do calls?
Yeah, that way, we're not kind of fighting with two topics and pushing out the callers, because I know a lot of our audience likes the calls, so
yeah,
I'll just defer and I'll take my topic next time.
Cool. And if what we may do is, rather than have you wait until the next time you're on, which delays all your topics once, there may be a week coming up where I'll need a sub, and I can just sub it and do it. Awesome. We'll see. We'll figure out the schedule afterwards. So we'll go ahead and take calls for however much time we got left. We got William in Bolivia, North Carolina. Again, right?
Yeah, again.
Sure.
Actually, I didn't mean to call, but